and talking sports with Evan, and it's comes with kind of a heavy heart tonight. As heard the unfortunate news this morning, as Brewers legend broadcast. I don't really know a correct word to use, strong enough to share what he meant to the state of Wisconsin and the city of Milwaukee. But Bob Uecker passed away at 90. Little did everybody know he was dealing with lung cancer, and unfortunately, we got the news today that he passed away. And a lot of thoughts and emotions running through everybody's mind right now. And had to do a show today. He's going to talk some Packers and recap their season, but I think it's more fitting to bring back old friend Kevin Holden, former sports director here in Milwaukee, now sports director out in Raleigh, North Carolina, their CBS station out there. And first of all, Kevin, welcome back to the show. I appreciate you jumping on.
Evan, thanks for having me, man. Always great to catch up. Sad topic, obviously, to bring it up, but good to see you and good to be back talking Wisconsin sports. I've been down here for a month, a little over a month now, and we still obviously are following everything happening in Wisconsin. So yeah, good to jump back on.
Yeah, I wish I was getting you on for better news. Well, I guess I was going to reach out to you to get you on to kind of talk, your thoughts on the Packers season now that you're out in Carolina. So I guess it would have been the best news either way. But unfortunately, as I mentioned, Bob Uecker passed away today at 90. And I know I was talking to you off air. You moved to Milwaukee, you said September of 2009. And I guess jump right into it. First time meeting Bob Uecker. How was that?
It's funny. This job has a way of putting you in front of people. You cover things of status, people of status, right? If there's a news story, if there's something major in the sports world, you deal with athletes, you deal with dignitaries, you deal with whatever. And so there comes a point where it's just part of your job to talk to those people, and you don't really think twice about it. The first time I met Bob Uecker was one of the few times when I lost my words. I didn't have anything at all, and it was my first day on the new job, and the old sports director Chris Francis had taken me over to the ballpark on day one. He was live in an afternoon newscast, and so I was around, and I said, "Hey, I think I'm going to stay here for a little while and go up to the press box and I just want to see how things operate." And he said, "Yeah, sure." So I went up, and sometime shortly before first pitch, Euchre came around. There's a hallway that goes where all the booths are, and then you turn this corner and you're in the media dining area. And so I met him right there at the entrance to the media dining area. And I said, "Hey, Kevin Holden, great to meet you." He said, "Great to meet you." And I just looked at him. I didn't know what to say. It obviously, no matter where you're from, no matter, as long as you were a fan of sports or a fan of WWE or a fan of Mr. Belvedere or, Johnny Carson, anything from that era, obviously Euchre was a larger than life personality. And I realized I didn't know what to say. So I just kind of stared at him for a second, and he smiled and said, "Yeah, it's all good, man. It's all good." I'm like, "Cool, thanks." So I don't know. It wasn't a lot to that first interaction, but I guess the term starstruck does apply.
Yeah, it definitely does. I first time I met him, so I interned at WSSP in Milwaukee, would have been 2012, 2013. I rushing to get to the Brewers clubhouse to get, or not clubhouse, the media room to get Ron Rennecke's audio for the game, and jump into the elevator, and I'm on the elevator with Bob Uecker. I was a little starstruck myself, and just kind of very quick, short conversation with them, and then happened to be standing around the press box. Walks up to me, pats me on the back, and the famous, I guess he said to everybody, "Hey, buddy, how's it going?" And, we chit-chatted for a little bit before he had to get back to the box, but very polite, funny, as you mentioned off air, quick-witted. And, I'm a random intern, never seen him really before ever, and he was very welcoming to the clubhouse. And hearing all the stories from everyone that's worked with him in the past, either broadcast partners or written media, he was always welcoming to, seems like everybody that came into that clubhouse or that
Yeah,
box.
yeah, that's really true. I mean, he was, it's interesting. The thing that strikes me today about Euchre, about the thing that he is and was and will continue to be, is we live in an era where almost nothing is universally liked. There's, there are opinions in one direction or another on a bazillion issues, right? There, I mean, and I don't, I'm not trying to jump down a political rabbit hole, but there are opposing viewpoints that are strongly expressed in a whole bunch of different areas of life. But Euchre was one of the few things that honestly, it's universal. I don't remember a bad thing said anywhere in any context at all when it came to Euchre. I mean, maybe there's somebody that's like, well, okay, stiff me for an autograph or something, but guy's got a schedule, right? Like it's not. I'm sure not something that came from his characters. Probably came from his time schedule or whatever. But everybody adored him. Everybody appreciated what he brought, and the humor, the knowledge of the game, and the fact that he meant as much as he did to the city of Milwaukee. We were talking about this earlier today. Somebody made a Vin Scully comparison, and I mean, it's valid in that Vin Scully and Bob Uecker are legendary baseball broadcasters, some of the best, two of the best ever to do it. But the difference is Vince Scully wasn't born in Los Angeles and didn't play for the team in the city. I mean, Euchre meant more somehow to his city than Vince Scully did to his. And that's I think that's the thing that's amazing is Euchre, as famous as he was, as big as he was, as much of a larger than life personality as he was Milwaukee, and he was that way from day one to the very end.
Yeah, and I know he got the nickname Mr. Baseball from Johnny Carson, but I think it's fair to call him Mr. Milwaukee too. I know all the buildings in Milwaukee and the Holden Bridge are all going blue tonight, and very nice memorial out in front of the Euchre statue. Early this morning, after shortly after the news passed, there was an unopened can of Miller Lite sitting right by the statue, and since then it's grown big time. And I saw photos out there of people just holding 6-packs of Miller Lite in their hand and cracking open a cold one, probably telling their favorite Bob Uecker stories that he told on air. And there are a lot of them. Do you have a favorite? I know broadcasting, you did probably get to hear his broadcast all the time because you're doing the Telemundo broadcast. But do you have a favorite Bob Uecker story that you used to tell on the air?
Well, I've got, the chance to have some interactions with him just because of, where we were on some of those Sundays doing Telemundo games. We were a couple booths down from Euchre and from the whole, radio and TV side for the Brewers. So we'd catch him, here and there. So there'd be the occasional elevator ride down. I always thought it was funny that on Sundays, if we met up in the elevator, he called me Senor because of the Telemundo broadcast. I also think maybe sometimes he didn't know my name, and that's okay. But I think that's why he said that. But he used to, if we ever had a ride down, he would say some funny stuff and whatever. But if we're talking about the interaction that stands out, it was probably there was a year in spring training because when you go to spring training to cover it, you have the players doing their first full squad workout. That's one of the big moments, the rite of passage, right? The new season's upon. Here's the team in full first full squad workout. Mark Atanasio used to be there every year for the first full squad workout, so Euchre was also there. And there were years where Euchre was available to talk to media the same way Atanasio was. And then over time that slipped a bit. Euchre was scaling back his schedule. But there was a year, and I've lost the year. I don't remember it. 16, 17, something like that, where we walked by this backfield and Euchre's on this backfield talking to Mark Atanasio and a couple of other Brewers staffers. And I'm like, you know what? Let's swing. I mean, we got a camera and a microphone, and I feel bad busting up a conversation between an iconic broadcaster and an owner, but I'm going to try it. So I did, and they both said yes, and there was something to the effect of he'll do it if everybody can be in the shot, meaning me and Euchre and Mark Atanasio. So it's three of us on camera, and I start the interview by saying, well, all right, we're here with Mr. Baseball, Bob Uecker, and Brewers owner Mark Atanasio. Wow, a lot of star power here. I kind of feel like a third wheel. And Mike goes to him, and I mean, zero pause, zero. And this man in his 80s and his quick wit shot right back and said, "Yeah, you're a third wheel. If it was the two of us, you'd be a second wheel, and if it was just you, you'd be a spare tire." And then just that the glare at the end of it, like totally playing the part. Man, and it's amazing because 99% of the human race can't do that at any age, and this dude is doing it in his 80s. He's coming up with this quick wit. So that's the one that stands out because you're on camera, right? Like it's not like I could just laugh for 10 minutes about it, well, which is what I wanted to do. I had to collect myself and go on, and it was man, it was perfect.
Yeah, so let's do a lot of Brewer baseball during the years, either just by being a fan or I work now weekends at the flagship station, and I had to cut lots of highlights at a lot of different Brewer games. And as a producer cutting highlights, and I couldn't find the audio, but he was joking about milking black widow spiders for spider tack. When that was that substance to grip the ball better was in the headlines about banning it, and I almost fell in my chair laughing when he was talking about spider tack, and he was talking about how he milked the black widow, and it was quite entertaining radio. But I think every story he told always made the broadcast fun, even when the Brewers are up 10-0 or down 10-0. He always made it a must listen, and it's got to be one of the hard things as a broadcaster if you're calling like I've called blowouts in football, and it's very hard to be as focused when it's a running clock. So I think that was probably one of his strong suits too, is he just knew how to keep fans engaged even with blowouts.
And he was, so there's your job in that moment when it's 10-0 and it's the sixth inning, your job is to fill the time for the duration of that game, right? And for him it wasn't just filling it. When he turned that charm on, he was equal with the game. He was able to tell stories that were either funny enough or riveting enough, compelling enough that you would continue to listen to it. So it wasn't just filling space. He was amazing, and that's a gift for sure. And one that we've really honestly never been without as Brewers fans, because that's the other thing that works in this case is that Euchre applies to any generation that's alive right now that knows anything about Milwaukee sports. It goes back to playing in the 60s as a Braves player. So if somehow you remember life before 1962, and I suppose there are people alive who do, they're the only ones that know life in Milwaukee without Euchre being some sort of baseball, having a baseball tie to the major league franchise. So he goes across generations. If you were watching in the 60s or the 70s and 80s when he was, still a young broadcaster and was doing, he did NBC's Game of the Week for a while in the 70s when Mark Fidrich was a thing. If you ever go back and watch the Mark Fidrich game, Mark Fidrich in 1976, I want to say, came out of nowhere and became this phenom pitcher for a couple months. So they featured him in a broadcast, a national broadcast. Euchre's the sideline guy in 1976 in a game that has nothing to do with Milwaukee. Like he spans generations, and I think that's the one uniting thing is that regardless of the age, you've got decades of good Euchre memories.
Yeah, there's never been Milwaukee Brewer baseball without Bob Uecker on a call. Like, I think spring training coming up this year. I know he didn't do any spring training games last year, I don't think. But either way, opening day or spring training, it's going to be the first time since I can't even imagine about hearing Bob Uecker saying his signature, "Hello, everybody." And it's going to be weird hearing that for the first time. I guess not hearing it, I guess is the correct thing to say. But I know his WWE stuff, or WWF at the time, I don't think people understand just how important of a role he played at WrestleMania. I know WrestleMania was supposed to be it wasn't just about the matches in the ring. It was supposed to be everything going on and him trying to find Vanna White to talk to her, to try to take her on a date, and then Andre the Giant famously choking him. It just made WrestleMania, the early days, that much more fun to watch too.
he was, and the thing about that was that's the early, as you say, the early days of WrestleMania, a time when WWF, as it was called then, as you said, um, was emerging from something specific to a very small specific audience to something nationwide. They were marketing on a much grander scale at that point, and man, he was the perfect guy to do it. He was a good face, a good actor, a guy that could help to do that. And so it's no coincidence that he's in that Hall of Fame as well. He's not just a Hall of Famer in the minds of Brewers fans and in the city of Milwaukee, the state of Wisconsin. An icon of the wrestling world. Icon is a fitting term.
Yeah, and I just saw Adam McCalvey on X, and I'm gonna have to give a listen to when we get off. He a fan came across on a cassette tape, family name of Kurt Stream, of Bob Uecker calling Hank Aaron's 754th home run. Imagine all the all the history that he saw, and all the moments to go for. I heard the comparison from Warren Spahn all the way to Jackson Cheerio. He's called or played with some of the best up and coming players and some of the best players of all time. Mr. Belvedere, a classic TV show there. His Miller Lite ads, I think, were some of the funniest ever. And then Major League. What are your thoughts of him as Major League?
And then so you're talking about a little different feel here for Euchre, because if you watch that, especially right off the bat, they established that Euchre is not the cleanest dude in Major League. You know what I mean? He's he is himself. He's an announcer, but the filter's off a little bit, like as opposed to what was there. And he was perfect to play the role because Euchre was the guy who was always uh, showing us that baseball, with its hangups and its buttoned up, whatever, didn't always have to be that way on the air. There was a role for personality. There was a role to step outside a little bit and cut some jokes and have some fun, which is really what Major League was. It was just ramped up a little bit for a movie audience. But yeah, he's iconic. Harry Doyle is iconic in that. I mean, the Brewers have had Harry Doyle bobbleheads before. That's crazy. There is a there is a statue at American Family Field that's based around a commercial appearance for him. That's insane. I mean, but that shows you like the what he did was just larger than life, and it didn't really matter if it was a commercial, if it was a movie, if it was a TV show, or if it was just telling us how Chris Capuano was going to get out of a jam. Like he was perfect at it.
One of my favorite, I one of the favorite things I heard about Major League is he ad-libbed pretty much everything in that movie for the announcing piece. Like, he didn't have a script that he was going off of. They kind of just gave him a hot mic and said, "Go be yourself." And I think, again, it shows just how quick-witted he was and how quick he was in coming up with just hilarious things to say.
He was, yeah, I mean, he was able to basically do it off the cuff at the same level as these guys who write professionally for movies for a living, right? Like they spend all their time culling through and making a script and making jokes and trying to perfect how the line should look and who should look where and how the camera should look. And you just talked, and he was perfect for it. And they just took the best of what he had and put it in the movie, and it's amazing. It really is. Like, it's just something, that a gift that very few people have, and both of us as broadcasters, I think, can appreciate it too, because it is a lot of work to, people think you just stand there and talk, and it's not that way at all. There's a lot of work that goes into it. There's a lot of politics that goes into it. And he made it look easy, and always did, whether it was back in the early years as a broadcaster or through Major League, where he's ad-libbing and just creating just blockbuster hit content, just off the cuff, no problems at all. It's wild. I mean, it's something that you will rarely see, and he'll be hard to replace. And there's the other half is, I mean, you can't really talk about a succession plan because there isn't another Bob Uecker. There just isn't. I mean, that does not exist. They can they can put someone in the role. They can put a person in there who's got certain qualifications, a former player, somebody who's funny, or or try to bring someone who's already a legend from another realm and try to implant him in that situation. I don't think you replace. I just even that legend isn't the same legend that Bob Uecker was.
I'm going to ask you your thoughts on who you think's at least going to fill that role in the 2025 season. But lots of things coming out from former players, current players, teams, media personalities, and everything. And I'll get into this story in a minute, but I do feel I bullied WWE and Triple H into acknowledging it. But my favorite one, did you see Alex Rodriguez's post on X regarding Bob Uecker?
No, not yet.
So I'll read it to you.
Yeah.
Broken to lose Bob Uecker. An iconic voice, and it's probably my favorite one, and you'll see why in a second. Heartbroken to lose Bob Uecker, an iconic voice of baseball. He brought joy not only to Cleveland, but to baseball fans everywhere. And his iconic catchphrase, like, get up, get out of here, gone, will never be forgotten. And he goes, R.I.P. Bob. And it's been up for 4 hours. And it's my favorite for the fact that Major League trilogy. And then I remember I've seen you post on social media before. There's that house in Milwaukee, right? That has the welcome to Cleveland on the roof.
Yeah.
It made me think of that immediately. And I'm like, did he see that sign flying in from New York or Seattle or Texas when he's playing the Brewers? And he just never realized that he wasn't going to Cleveland for those games?
And the thing is, he played in the interleague era. Like there might have been a time where you could say, well, okay, maybe this didn't work because of this, that, or the other. But he played, not only did he start in the American League when the Brewers were in the American League, he also played in the interleague era. I remember him hitting his 400th homer at Miller Park back in 2005. I mean, come on, man. I mean, I mean, he's not wrong. They brought joy to Cleveland that they probably haven't had otherwise. But Cleveland would not be the city that I would have mentioned first and only in a tweet. That's fantastic.
Yeah, and the reason why I'm saying I think I bullied Triple H and WWE because they hadn't posted anything, and Triple H posted something about TNA and WWE having a working relationship, and then I commented, "Hey, great news! Hey, it's like something along the lines of great news. Now, when are you going to post about Bob Uecker?" And like 20 minutes after I said that, Triple H sent out a tweet about it, and then WWE about 20 minutes after that. So I think I bullied them into doing it.
Good for you. He should have done it. He's an icon in that sport too. I got to admit that I haven't put anything up on social media because I want to make it. I want to make it right. I want to post the right thing. I don't want to just go, oh yeah, condolences. I want it to come from the heart, and I haven't had time today. Like from the moment that happened, I've had made a couple of appearances where we talked about Euchre, but I've also been working at my current day job here. So yeah, at some point tonight I'll do that. But like, it's probably the same situation. Like when he saw it, he's like, well, okay, first of all, that has to happen, but also you don't want to, you can't mail that one in. You really got to bring that one from the heart.
And I'm sure I had literally nothing to do with it, but I know the running joke is that Triple H sees what fans are tweeting at him. So that's kind of why I was tweeting it at him. Like, hey, are you going to acknowledge it?
Why not?
See if they do anything on SmackDown tomorrow, like some kind of like screen or tribute screen or something. But I don't want to talk about post Bob, but obviously it's something we all got to think about. But you got Levering and you got Grindo, you have Mauer. So they definitely have those three very good in each their own way. I think Levering's one of the best in the business currently as well. I'm guessing it'll probably be a combination because I know Levering does a lot of TV stuff now too when Brian Anderson is off doing whatever for Turner Sports. Is it safe to probably assume that those three would be the ones? Because you don't want to just rush a search. If you are going to truly post a position and hire somebody, you don't want to rush the search and get it done between now and April. So you want to like truly do a true search if that's what you want to do. So I think it's probably, I'm assuming safe to say, to be those three carrying the torch for at least this season.
Yeah, I think that's a good guess, and I also think that maybe you don't think of it in terms of replacing Euchre. You could hire another person to be part of the team, but the ingredients will never be the same for that soup. I mean, it just can't. So maybe what happens is they add another body to it that can bring something to the table. But I don't know if it's a euchre succession plan so much as it is just, add a body and go. And there's, you, like I said, you can come at it a ton of different ways. If you're looking for a humorous former player, Tim Dillard has bounced around in various roles in the broadcast for the Brewers, and I think he's funny. I think he's a good one. Tim Dillard would be the first person to tell you he's not Bob Uecker, but maybe if that's the plan, is to at least fill that part of the role, then Dillard could do that. Or like I said, you just come up with somebody with insane amounts of polish and bring them in as a top broadcaster. But I don't think that's necessary. The advantage that the Brewers have is Euchre was a legend, but he worked with a team of incredibly talented broadcasters. Levering, Brian Anderson, Lane Grindle, all these guys are top-notch guys in the business already. So I don't know if there's a need to really mess with the mix that much. And I don't know if you try to say here is the next Bob Uecker, because I just don't know if those shoes can be filled.
Yeah, you definitely don't do it this year.
No.
You don't have enough time to find somebody at that. Well, you can't find somebody at his level, but as you said, we have guys that are more than capable of doing an outstanding job doing it with Levering and Grindle and Anderson and those guys. So I don't think there's really a need. So I want to say coming out of spring training or during spring training, the Brewers made the statement that Bob Uecker is going to work basically his own schedule and work games when he feels up to it. And I that just something about that kind of it just kind of stood out to me. And I get he's 90, older people, I get it. There's some days good and bad. But I don't know, something about that kind of stood out to me. That maybe there's something more to it. I know you were around quite a bit during your days in Milwaukee. You ever like being around him, seeing him, and if you don't want to answer it, that's perfectly fine. Did you? And I know he was dealing with cancer since 2023. Did you ever get like an indication that there might be something more to it health wise, or it was his age?
Well, no, I don't know of anything specific from a health standpoint. I know the interactions were way less the last couple of years that he was there. In other words, the first several years that I was, calling Brewers games on a Sunday, he'd walk through the media dining room. He and Gary Matthews Sr., Phillies broadcaster, used to do some back and forth. They used to talk a little trash, fun stuff to each other, and he would play around with a couple of people, say hello to some people, and then disappear. And that eventually turned into you just wouldn't see him. That they would roll him, be like, he would go with his crew, go directly to the booth, and then after he was in the booth, go directly out. So the interactions were way way less in those last couple of years. So I didn't get a much of a view, but I think you hit on something there, which is you can put the pieces together a little better now that it's in retrospect that he probably had an idea, because what he said at the start of the year in 24 was, if I remember it right, was I'm calling this game. I'm here for opening day. And after that, we'll take it day by day. And that was, I put it, it's funny because I looked at my Facebook post from opening day, and I quoted that from him, and I said, so what he's doing here is just enjoying himself in case this is his last one. I didn't know anything saying that, but I said that's the way we all are. You enjoy this one because you never know if you're going to make it back this way again. So I don't know. If you're asking about obvious signs, no, I didn't, but I also saw much less of him, especially down the stretch in 24. It was pretty rare to see him.
Yeah, and my mind tends to wander, overthinker, and at the time I was kind of like, something seems weird here. There was Euchre sign off, then Levering sign off, And then Tristan Yelich talking in his locker, fighting back tears, and how disappointed they were that they couldn't do it for Bob. And I heard from reading articles and whatnot, he spent a lot more time in the clubhouse after the game was over than he had in quite some time. I guess I'm wondering if, now I'm not saying he knew right then and there he was done, but I'm wondering if part of him knew that this is probably it.
Yeah.
Just always, yeah, yeah, because I wonder if like he was kind of like, well, subconsciously, probably it, and I need to make sure I take as much in as I can.
Yeah, and say the proper goodbyes. And I
Yeah.
think that may be, again, pieces coming together after the fact. Levering's reaction, Christian Yelich's reaction. Like I think it told us something. And that's I don't know anything beyond that, but it would make a lot of sense that maybe he either knew something or at least was letting on that he didn't know if he would be around for the start of the season. And turned out he was right. And whatever it was he said, there was definitely an emotional reaction from a lot of people. So yeah, there's again, these are things I don't know for sure, but there are pieces that fit much better now, or much more
It make more.
logically now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So typically, like for me, typically when a famous person, celebrity passes away, it's usually oh, that's sad, and that's about it. But for Bob Uecker, it seemed like we lost a family member. It seems like a relative. It seems like somebody that, and I met him twice in my entire life. He probably couldn't pick me out of a lineup if I was the only person in the room, but just kind of got the vibe like a family member passed away.
It's a good way to put it. The grandfather of Milwaukee baseball at this point, and it's a loss for the city, it's a loss for the team, it's a loss for the fan base. Um, yeah, for sure. It is a far-reaching situation, and yeah, I've talked more today with folks in Milwaukee than I have in a while. Since coming down here, because it's a tough day for the city. And again, when you have an icon like that, and he's truly, worthy of the word icon, the word replacement just doesn't work. He's one of a kind. They broke that mold. So, yeah, it's a tough day, and it's in the dead of winter too. There's a part of you that wishes that spring training would start tomorrow, so you wouldn't have to think about it for the next month. But here we are.
Yeah, his 91st birthday would have been Saturday. So, don't want to keep you any longer. 'Cause I know you have some dinner you got to eat before you're back on the air. But any final thoughts you want to give regarding Uecker and just the emotions and the feelings here tonight?
Well, it was a pleasure to be able to work alongside somebody like that for the amount of time that I did. And it was great because it brought a bit of childhood to life. I didn't have the pleasure of growing up in Milwaukee, but I knew about Euchre just as much where I grew up as they did in Milwaukee. So it was nice to be able to have that legend kind of come to life for that time. But hey, man, maybe this is the year to go and put a few go across the state line. Of course, nobody breaking any laws, but put a few dollars on the Brewers to win, because maybe they'll do it for Bob this year.
Yeah. Well, you can do it at the Paddle Sportsbook now. It's just
Right.
college team, like state teams to Wisconsin, you can't for college. But
Okay.
last thing I want to say before I end the show is, I'm playing in my thoughts moments that stood out to me involving Bob Uecker. So obviously, listened to him a lot growing up. Let's go with my dad to pick my mom up from work, waiting for her to come out. Had the Brewers on the radio. At my uncle's house in Door County, have that on the radio. We're out playing outside, but 2011 comes to mind. I going up to Door County. That's where my parents live. My mom lives now, but my parents were living at the time. Had to pick my cousins up who were going to school by me and bring them up too with me. So I dropped them off, and I'm parked in the driveway of their house. And I'm not going in the house I think I pulled in the driveway right when Morgan was on second base. Gomez was coming up to bat. I'm like, I'm not leaving this car until I see what happens. And then, sure enough, the base hit that sent the Brewers to the NLCS. I think that's probably what stands out to me the most. And I was like, I'm not leaving this car. I'm not going in the house and hearing the television's announcers variation of this call. I want the Uecker call, and I think that's the one, like I said, really stands out to me.
Yeah, and no offense to oh my goodness, the name escapes me. Rojas was the guy doing the TV
Yeah.
stuff. Cookie Rojas's kid. Um,
No offense
but
to
Victor.
Bob.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, no offense to Victor Rojas, because Victor Rojas did a lot of good stuff in the baseball world, but no, you're going to have a moment that will be defined as one of the greats in franchise history. You want one of the greats in franchise history calling that moment. That makes a ton of sense. I wish we could have done it at the stadium because we were in the room where they have post game waiting
Yeah.
for that to happen, and of course all you have is the TV broadcast up. There's literally a television, that's what you're watching, and we got Victor Rojas, and that was great, but Euchre was iconic, of course.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it. Love to get you on in the future to talk, more, I guess, more sports talk than, talking about Bob Uecker. I appreciate you jumping on short notice and giving me your thoughts and your feelings with this just devastating and heartbreaking news today of Bob
Yeah,
Uecker.
but glad to join you, and like you said, we'll talk on happier things the next
Yeah,
time.
happier thing. So this has been Talking Sports with Evan. We'll be back next week for more traditional current events, Wisconsin current event sports talk, Packers, Brewers, Bucks, Badgers, whatever's going on nationally as well. Find the show on YouTube, on Facebook, Talking Sports with Evan, or right here on X at Evan with Sports. Talk to y'all next week. Enjoy the rest of your night and your weekend.